As the UCP leadership race nears its conclusion, and debate rages on over impact of a proposed Sovereignty Act and the drive for more autonomy, Fairness Alberta has been reaching out to other provinces, notably Ontario, with an eye on prosperity and national unity. And joining us now is the organization's executive director, Bill Bewick. Dr. Bewick, you were in Ontario earlier this month. What was your message to power brokers in that province where equalization and getting a fair deal for Alberta are concerned?
Yeah, there's a few international and national developments that I think are making our case more clear than ever. Obviously, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has led to an energy security crisis around the world. It's fueled inflation considerably, which is hurting all Canadians. And then here in Alberta, we have the top leadership contestants to be the next premier, all proposing fairly strong measures to shake up the federation a little bit. So we feel like it's an ideal time to be heading to Ontario in particular, because they have so much manufacturing, so much energy use that they have there, and competing directly with U.S. customers and clients who are not facing the same sort of cost pressures that we are here in Canada. And so to get them to understand that the world needs Canadian energy more than ever. Alberta and Saskatchewan and BC in particular have done so many things to improve the environmental footprint of our activities, and the layering of policies from the federal government has made it so that it's very difficult to get investment to expand our ability to both produce energy and food, which is really what the world needs right now. So it's time to kind of give a serious rethink to our policies. And given that Ontario is 40% of the country and 40% of the seats and a real power base, we really feel like if we can get them on board, that we can make meaningful changes to help Canada.
How big or how tough a sell is this in Ontario? Is this a conversation residents of that province have any interest in engaging in?
It's not always easy to get Ontario to kind of look to the far ends of the country like Alberta and BC and Saskatchewan to see that there's meaningful alliances that need to be built. But at the same time, they are gripped with the inflation crisis. They are gripped with a competitiveness crisis when they're trying to compete with all the companies that are across the lake from them in both directions. The Americans just have a real advantage right now because of the way that the policies have taken shape there. And so they do care about prosperity. And I think they also care about national unity. Certainly Ontarians have been one of the strongest ones to try and push for policies that are friendly to Quebec when Quebec had a unity crisis. And I feel like the combination of self-interest, what's good for the world, and what's good for Canada's unity will help make them hopefully push to moderate some of the policies and find a better balance between energy and the environment so that Canada can continue to grow, continue to be prosperous, and that helps everybody.
Well, now with that in mind, what kind of impact does all the talk of a Sovereignty Act have on your efforts? What's your read on how politicians and economic leaders outside the province are reflecting on this Building Alberta dialogue around the UCP leadership race?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some concern. We heard it from a few business leaders, and we also had a great long chat with the Parliamentary Secretary for Intergovernmental Relations for Premier Ford, and they, they're concerned about it. But I'm trying to get them to see it as an opportunity to sort of shift the way that we've been operating here in Canada. Not only obviously coming up with some better pro-energy policies. Helps the West and helps Toronto indirectly and Ontario through all the manufacturing and finances that are located there. But also Ontario is our main target because they're a have province like Alberta and BC and Saskatchewan. And whenever the federal government gets bigger and takes more taxes and debt to then redistribute to the rest of the country, those four provinces always lose out. At least their taxpayers do. So I'm trying to help them understand that when the federal government keeps getting bigger and bigger, Ontarians actually pay a premium for all those programs too, and that just means more wealth being redistributed from Ontario east over the Ottawa River. So I'm trying to sort of generate a bit of a shift in thinking so that Ontario sees itself as allied with the prosperous west in the country and not kind of isolated on its own, that it has partners and it has people with shared interests and shared concerns out here in the western provinces.
Now, you're obviously putting a focus on energy policy as well. What's the drive then behind what you're calling the unjust transition campaign?
Yeah, we've heard for a while about how a so-called just transition can move away from oil and gas and replace it with renewable energy and technology and things. But I think over the last year, there's never been a bigger sort of rethink that's been obviously required, because Europe is stranded right now and beholden to either being too nice to Vladimir Putin or having to ration their fuel this winter, because they were so dependent on Russia for these resources that they need to heat their homes and power their lives. That they're now in a very difficult situation. We've had the German Chancellor come to Canada hoping to be able to get some more energy. We've seen the U.S. fill the void for a lot of countries by expanding its LNG considerably and just making an immense amount of money, as well as providing LNG for Europe so they have an option. If Canada had done the same thing over the last 7 years, we could be a major source of stability for them. But instead, we've kind of choked off all the opportunities except for the one on the West Coast that hopefully we'll get through. But if Canada had been more proactive, and it's still not too late, the world needs LNG more and more and more for the next 20 years to displace coal in Asia and provide energy security around the world. So if we can just get people to see that it's not just to choke off Canada's ability to produce resources, the emissions are just going to come from other countries that care much less about the environment, care much less about human rights. Instead, Canada is the responsible producer that the world should be turning to and is turning to, but we're not able to meet that demand.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for time, Bill. Appreciate your time this evening. Thank you kindly.
My pleasure, anytime, Michael. And if people want to learn more, please go to fairnessalberta.ca.
All right. Bill Bewick, Executive Director of Fairness Alberta.